jack it up.
Hurts keeps, Hurts cuts, Hurts has the first down, and Jalen Hurts might have just put it away for the Eagles. Touchdown.
Tyrese Maxey and the Sixers are going to win this game. Joel, tough turnaround in the lane. Another 30-10 performance for Joel Embiid.
Hurts connects with Devontae Smith.
Hello and welcome back to the 215 Scoop. I'm back here with my buddy Asher. We're here to talk some Sixers basketball as well as to talk just a little bit about everything that's going on in the NBA playoffs, which are probably one of the most hectic and honestly the most even playoffs we've ever seen, the most competitive playoffs we've seen in recent years.
Yeah.
So Asher, before we get into the Sixers stuff, could you just go over what's been going on around the league as far as the other four semifinals that have been going on around the league?
Sure. So over in the West, we have the Lakers and the Warriors. The Lakers currently lead the series 3-1 as we go back to Golden State for Game 5, which I believe is tonight.
Yes.
Today's
Tonight
Wednesday.
Yeah, tonight at 10. It's at 10. The thing about that series is that Jordan Poole and a lot of the Warriors role players kind of fell flat in their faces. Even Curry has been a little off the past couple of games. So, I mean, this is make or break, obviously. I mean, they lose at the end of their season, so they got to keep their playoff hopes alive and their championship defense alive in that series. Next up,
Nuggets Suns, which played right after they played their Game 5, right after the Sixers played Game 5 last night. The Nuggets won. They currently lead that series 3-2 as they go back to Phoenix for Game 6.
Yeah, watching that game was very similar to the Sixers Game 5 last night. Both games last night were kind of blowouts. We'll talk about the Sixers in a moment, but watching that Nuggets game, I was expecting a little bit more. I was hoping it was going to be more competitive than the Sixers game, but it turned out to be pretty much the same result because, I mean, we could be on a collision course with the Sixers and Nuggets in the finals. I mean, I don't want to go that far, but that's what it looks like, right?
Yeah, and definitely you could feel the personally, I just felt there was more chemistry with the Nuggets than with the Suns. Like, you can see that they really haven't played a lot together with KD being there. I felt like that was like one of the main differences. The Nuggets, the ball movement is just so crisp. They always know where each other are going to be.
And let's also note that Kevin Durant, while he is a superstar and probably a future Hall of Famer, in the playoffs, he seems to dip a bit in his play. He doesn't seem to show up in big moments like last year with the Nets, 2 years ago with the Nets. He's fallen short so many times in his career. I'm willing to bet there's some sort of linearity between his play and his team's not seeing that much success in the playoffs. I mean, obviously he was part of that Warriors team, but it was the Golden State Warriors, and he had Klay Thompson and all them around them. But I mean, since then, I have been pretty disappointed in Kevin Durant in the playoffs.
Yeah, well, it's also worth noting that Suns team is missing Chris Paul, and there were most of the games where the Suns have won, it's been because of KD and Booker.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I think Ayton, if anyone on that team of the starters, is really to blame. He's kind of fallen off in the playoffs, but KD has had his struggles as well. Got to give credit to Denver. Aaron Gordon has played some pretty good defensive games against him.
I mean, Denver was the first seed in the West. They're certainly showing it right now. And then lastly, we got the other series in the Eastern Conference.
So Miami leads that 3-1. They play at 7:30 tonight, so possible that Miami just goes ahead and waits for either us or the Celtics in the next round after tonight.
Yeah, I mean, I would put my bets on the Heat right now. The Knicks. I mean, I don't know if you watched Game 4 at all, but the Knicks just looked dead. They looked like they didn't have energy. They looked like they didn't have the energy. They just looked like they didn't want it, especially Julius Randle, who was supposed to be the leader and the star of that team. He kind of fell flat on his face in that game. So, I mean, it's going to take a miracle for the Knicks to be able to pull even a win tonight. I think would be a miracle, even though they're.
Yeah, I haven't watched much of that series. I've been focusing on the other ones, but I mean, the scores haven't been particularly close. All in the Heat's favor recently.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, we could be slated for a Sixers Heat Eastern Conference Finals, and we'll talk about it in a moment. But now we're going into the Sixers stuff. Let's just do a quick little recap of how this series has been. It's certainly been a roller coaster of emotions. And that might be an understatement. Game 1, no Embiid. Harden scores 45 and leads the Sixers to stun the Celtics at home in Game 1, 119 to 115. After that game, I was ecstatic. I'm going to be honest. I was probably it's probably bad for me to say, but I was more excited after that Game 1 win than last night's Game 5 win. Probably because of how close the game was and how high intensity it was. Like the Sixers Game 5 last night, they led the entire game. And we'll get into that later, but it was a really weird feeling for me at the end of Game 5. I was hyped, of course, because 3-2 lead, we're 1 win away from the Eastern Conference Finals. But Game 1, it was most Sixers fans were going into the series thinking they're probably going to lose in 5 or 6, maybe 7 if we can push it that far. But they come out, they win Game 1. Gets our hopes up. Maybe we weren't expecting to win Game 2, but it looked like a possibility after that performance from James Harden. Now going into Game 2, Joel Embiid returns, but he's only about 30%. That was very obvious during that game. The Celtics absolutely destroyed the Sixers by 34 points. It was 121 to 187. So that is a game that can be forgotten. I don't really have anything to say about that. Just the Sixers looked like they didn't want it. But at the same time, after that loss, I wasn't too mad because we had already taken 1 for Boston. So we were going back to Philly with a tie series, which is probably best case scenario at that point.
Yeah.
Sure. So we come home, Game 3, kind of expecting the Sixers to kind of step up here. They have a real chance to take some control in the series after taking home court from the Celtics. Sure enough, Harden continues his struggles from Game 2, except it gets even worse. Probably plays one of his worst games of his career in Game 3. Yeah. I don't know what his point total was or what his stats were, but the Celtics won 14-102. The Sixers looked completely deflated after that game. I was damn near. I wanted to call it a season. I wanted because it looked like the team at that time, it looked like, the Sixers don't look like they have the aggression right now. They don't look like they want it. So the thought of them coming back and winning 3 games in a row or winning 2 in Boston was, very far-fetched for me to say. Yeah. As any team probably. I don't know how you felt after that game, but after game 3, what were your emotions?
Yeah, that it's worth noting how different this really has been a roller coaster of a series. And I think we both felt that the Sixers were dead in the water after Game 3 because Game 1, you go and you stun the Celtics. You expect them to come back with a fire, trying to redeem themselves, and they do. They kill us Game 2. So then we go back to Philly, and you expect the Sixers to have the energy that the Celtics just had. We're back home. They just embarrassed us. Let's come out and play. And they just don't. There's no energy there. I did bring up the stats for Harden. He played 40 minutes, went 3 for 14. 2 for 7 from 3. He did have 11 assists, but 5 turnovers. And it just looked. There are just moments in that game where he was caught in midair, stuck in the paint, didn't know whether to shoot or pass, wasn't being aggressive, but also wasn't fully locked into being a distributor. It just looked like he was confused out there. He didn't know what to do with himself.
I think he was very much. I think he was trying to get. A big thing for Harden has been all season is just accounting for Embiid as far as how he plays. And again, I think at this point in the season, it's playoffs. We need the best of you. I don't care who's on the floor. You need to put out your best. Do what you do. That's the thing. And sure enough, that leads us right into our Game 4. The Sixers go up as much as 16, but blow it in the fourth quarter. They let the Celtics fight back. The game eventually goes to overtime. And Harden hits a clutch 3 from the corner to take the lead, 116-115 with about 18 seconds to go. Celtics bring it back up, and Marcus Smart takes a shot about 0.5 seconds too late.
Yeah, maybe even less than that.
Maybe even less. It was a really, really close shot.
Yeah.
But Marcus Smart, for some reason, in both instances, at the end of regulation and in the end of overtime, got the final shot when you had that. There was Brogdon was open on that overtime play. I believe was also open in that that last play in regulation. So there was something to be said about that. It was just really puzzling, even a Sixers fan. Why are you having Marcus Smart taken a potential go-ahead three. I mean, I know he showed he's not your best shooter. That's the thing. We had Tatum and Brown on lockdown. You still have Brogdon there. Brogdon down there can hit it from there, as well as Al Horford. I don't know where he was on the court at the time of those plays, but
Yeah.
Al Horford, supposedly elite 3-point shooter, you could probably rely on him. So I mean, in my opinion, that game 4. My question for you about game 4, was it more the Sixers won it or the Celtics lost it? Because there was the timeout. There was all this controversy with the timeout at the end. They had 2 timeouts at the end of OT. So
I think they also had the play where Marcus Smart ended up taking and missing that 3 in regular time.
yes. So
they also had a timeout there.
So my question is, with all that being said, did the Celtics lose game 4 or did the Sixers win it?
I mean, I definitely think the Sixers won. We had our conversation obviously about this game already. We talked about it a little bit, and we just felt like there was the Celtics seemed to have more energy in that fourth quarter as they started coming back, and the Sixers didn't seem to have that energy. I mean, it definitely felt like it felt like a classic Sixers, okay, this is the second round. We're at home. We're going to collapse. We saw it versus the Hawks.
Yeah.
And we've seen it in previous series where the other team just seems to want it more than we do. Could say that about last year's series with the Heat as well. But then all of a sudden, this life seemed to spring back into the team. Tobias Harris was hustling for rebounds. PJ Tucker was hustling for rebounds. There was a possession late in the fourth quarter where we had 3 chances at it, and we ended up scoring because of hustling on the offensive boards. And that seemed to kind of breathe life back into the Sixers, and everybody I don't know. I mean, there was just a point in the fourth where it seemed like we weren't playing a playoff game. It was weird.
Yeah, it seemed like they were very relaxed. I mean, they were up by 15. They were up by double digits. So I think it was a mix of a bunch of things. I think Embiid was getting tired. I mean, we almost saw the same thing happen last night where they started resting their starters and the Celtics wanted to try and come back. And I think that's what happened in game 4 is, everybody got relaxed. Everybody got comfortable because they were at home. They were up by double digits. They were like, all right, we got this in the bag. So they took their foot off the gas, which is something you cannot do against a team. I mean, any team in the playoffs, let alone the Boston Celtics, who are the most efficient offense in the league at this point.
Yeah.
Most efficient offense left if they weren't already the best already. So, I mean, I think I agree with you. I think the Sixers, especially in overtime, they brought that Rocky mentality, that typical Philly mentality where you take a hit, you get knocked down, you get right back up again. The Celtics came back. They went up by 5 at one point at the end of the game. I think it was 105-100. The Sixers fight right back. I think it was a mix of both. I think the Celtics definitely had an opportunity. I would have taken that timeout. If I were the Celtics, if I were Joe Mazzulla, I would have taken that timeout, drew up a play. I know the Sixers have an elite defense of their own, so I think the Sixers still would have had a great chance to defend it. But if I were the Celtics coach, I would have definitely taken a timeout there. I mean, you had 2 timeouts. So say if you take a timeout, you go for it, and it doesn't work, you have another timeout, and you can just try again. So all you have to do is just get the rebound. Just get the offensive board. I mean, that's my point. I mean, all credit to the Sixers. Sixers did great. I'm so happy that they won. But I think the Celtics did have multiple opportunities to take a 3-1 lead in game 4.
Yeah. I think the Smart 3 in the fourth quarter, he was pretty wide open. I honestly feel like that was a good decision to not call a timeout there. They were pushing it up the court, I think, faster than the Sixers were expecting. And they got off a decent shot.
Yeah, I mean, not as fast. I mean, they should have gone a little faster if I were the Celtics. I would have rushed it a little bit because they were kind of jogging down the court. I get there were 18 seconds left, but still, I mean, every second counts.
Yeah, and we saw that with the second one in overtime. That possession just seemed discombobulated. It didn't seem like the team knew how much time was on the clock.
Exactly.
I remember, I forget. I don't know exactly who the announcer was for that game, but he was like, what are they doing? They don't have any time. And there's 3 seconds left, and then they passed it to Smart, and then he looked up and he realized there's no time left on the clock, and he just has to shoot.
I think it was the NBA equivalent to the Dallas Cowboys against the Niners in 2022.
Mhm.
Remember that where they ran no huddle with like 10 seconds left and couldn't even get a play.
Yeah.
Couldn't even
That
get the
that
game
got to
winning
like the
play out.
50.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So it kind of gave me the vibe like that. But enough of all those games. Let's talk about last night's exciting win. The Sixers pretty much blew out. I mean, it was only a 12-point win, but the Sixers led as much as 21 in that game. They pretty much led the entire game.
Mhm.
Sixers outplayed the Boston Celtics on the road in almost every facet, and they did everything. I mean, almost everything I wanted them to do. We talk about the keys to winning this series and what the Sixers need to do with the series notched up at 2. What we needed to see from role players, what we needed to see on defense, everything is what happened. Now, Asher, I saw you made a few notes. Al Horford, I think it's a very important note to make is that Al Horford was 0 for 7 from the field, and all of those shots were from 3-point range. So there goes the supposed elite 3-point shooter argument that he had for himself. So it's funny
Yeah.
that Boston fans last night actually got so bad that I think it was about 5 minutes left in the fourth. You had Boston fans running to the exits, booing the team. I mean, it was just a complete embarrassment for Boston.
Yeah.
And those fans have been through hell. I don't know if you follow hockey, but best team in NHL history, the Boston Bruins just blew a 3-1 lead just about a week ago to the Florida Panthers. They had that series all but locked up, and now they're going through this with the Sixers. They're losing to a team that they probably should be in this series.
Yeah.
And now they're on the brink of elimination, going back to Philadelphia. So some statistical notes. Maxey had 30 points. He was 50% from 3, shooting 6 or 12. And then you also noted Daniel House getting a lot of minutes, coming big on getting boards.
Yeah, and credit to Doc there. Kind of what has become a rare good adjustment from Doc Rivers.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a rare adjustment at all. We don't seem to see him
Right. Exactly.
many
He's a very
adjustments in
stingy
series.
coach. Probably one of the most stingiest in the league.
Yeah, but I mean, we see him put House in. I think he came in with like the first set of bench players. So like Melton came out, Niang came out, and Daniel House came out, which was a surprise.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, he kind of injected that like hustle energy into the team that they were lacking at points in Game 4. And I think that's part of the reason that the Sixers were able to control that lead for the whole time. Because you put in a guy like Daniel House, who, even though the Sixers are up 20, is still hustling for boards, getting offensive rebounds, running on fast breaks. I think that really contributed to the way that the Sixers were able to control their lead, which is not something that they're usually able to do.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, I just want to go through some of my keys. So the Sixers need to be aggressive on defense. And I'm looking at these. I mean, they were notched up at 4 steals apiece, but looking at blocks, the Sixers blocked the Celtics 5 times as opposed to their 1 block against us. The Sixers really, I was looking at it all game. They were clutching up on the Celtics. They weren't allowing them to get inside much. There were a couple open looks that they allowed in the inside in the paint, but the Celtics, the Sixers did an amazing job forcing the Celtics to shoot from 3. And as we know, Jason Tatum has been cold from 3 lately. Al Horford obviously had a very rough night shooting. So the Sixers did a fantastic job limiting the Celtics to the 3-point shot. And again, that is where they thrive. But looking at these, just statistically, the Sixers just outplayed the Celtics in every facet. Looking at it, field goal percentage, shooting from the field, the Sixers were 50% as opposed to the 39.8% from the Celtics. 3-point percentage, 40% from the Sixers, shooting 12 for 30, 12 for 38 for 31.6% from the Celtics. Now, here's a thing that I heard a lot, and a lot of Celtics fans like to complain about this, is getting to the free throw line and how many foul shots the Sixers have gotten. Well, let me just read this stat for last night. The Sixers went to the free throw line 27 times. The Celtics, 34 times. The Sixers, they knocked down 23 of those 27 free throw shots, shooting 85%, while the Celtics only knocked down 25 of their 34 shots, shooting 73.5%.
Mm.
So,
Yeah.
huge thing there. A lot of Celtics fans are arguing. They like to argue that Embiid and Harden, all they do is draw fouls, and that's how they get their points. Well, you're damn right, because they knock down their free throw shots. I think Harden has only missed 5 free throws this entire series.
Yeah,
Embiid,
and Embiid,
not more than that, maybe 6.
yeah.
Well, I mean, the Sixers are doing exactly what they need to do, specifically Joel Embiid and James Harden. I mean, we talked about last week on the podcast, if you remember. We wanted Joel Embiid to be more aggressive. We wanted him to drive in, either we needed him to knock those shots down, or draw a foul, which is exactly what they did.
Yeah.
But that's exactly what he did last night, which is what we love. As far as rebounding goes, the Sixers out-rebounded. This is another key. I wanted the Sixers to be aggressive with getting boards. They out-rebounded the Celtics 49-36. Offensive rebounds were notched at 9 apiece, but defensive rebounds 40-27 in the Sixers' favor.
Yeah, that's huge.
Which is huge. And that was the big thing that was going wrong for the Sixers, especially in games 2 and 3, is they weren't being aggressive on the defensive end, and they kept on allowing the Celtics to get those second chance points. And with a team like the Celtics, you can't allow that to happen. That is not allowed, because they shoot too well. They shoot too well, especially in second chance points. I'm pretty sure they're one of the best in the league in second chance points. I had to look up the stat for myself, but I mean, I would not be surprised if they were one of the best.
Yeah, and I mean, a team like that, I mean, last night the Sixers outshooting the Celtics, which is nice, but that's not always going to happen. The Celtics are such an efficient scoring team that you can't really rely on just being able to outshoot them every game. Last night they had an off night, but I mean, you have to out-possession them. You have to outshot attempt them to win. So you need to either force more turnovers, or you have to grab more boards than they do. The Sixers were able to do that. It just seemed like every time the Celtics were starting to get hot, Jason Tatum heats up inevitably at certain points in the game. Doesn't matter how bad of a game he's having. He's going to hit 2 consecutive threes at some point, because that's just how good of a player he is.
Mm-hmm.
The Sixers were able to answer and counter punch and keep the Celtics down. Every time the Celtics would go down and hit what seemed like a big 3, the Sixers would come down and hit a bigger one, or get an end or something like that. They were just really able to control the momentum really well, which is, again, not something that you usually see from a Sixers team.
Yeah, exactly.
It's really refreshing to see.
Listen, I just got to pop the question. And one more point. I mean, again, my 3 points were just all defensive points. Get the boards, force turnovers. And looking at these numbers for the turnovers last night, the Sixers did not win the turnover battle. And even despite that, the Sixers had 13 turnovers as opposed to the Celtics 8.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the big reason why is because, I mean, we were able to stop them. I mean, looking at the points off turnovers, the Sixers got 12 off of their 13 turnovers, and then the Celtics got 13 off of their 8. So being able to keep that margin a little bit closer. I mean, if I'm the Sixers, I lost my train of thought.
I think I know where you're going. So the points off turnovers were basically the same, but the Celtics forced more turnovers.
Yes.
So we were stopping them in transition.
Exactly. We were stopping them in transition, which, I mean, the Celtics are dangerous in transition. And speaking of that, fast break points, I'm looking at another statistic between these two teams. The Sixers had 15 fast break points as opposed to the Celtics 5.
Wow.
So
that's huge.
The Sixers were able to lock down the Celtics. And you know how the Celtics transition offense is, the fast break offense is. They can dominate you, even if it's like 4-on-3. They'll play 4-on-3 because they're quick. The Sixers have been known to not getting back in time. So a lot of times in the series, I've seen when the Celtics go on a fast break, it's like a 4v3, 5v3. But the Sixers last night were able to hustle and get back and lock them down, which is great. So I just want to pop the question: do you think the Sixers have enough to close this out tomorrow night?
Yeah, I mean, they definitely do. I think they have a very good chance. Like we said, they just need to hit on all those keys. If they're you got to keep the turnover battle close at least. If you're not going to keep the turnover battle close, you have to at least keep the fast break points close. play good transition defense, run out on offense, like guys like Tyrese Maxey do their thing, and then just rebound. We need guys like Daniel House grabbing 5. We need Tobias Harris and Paul Reed doing their thing when they're in there. We need Embiid to grab his usual 12, 13. I mean, I really think that's the biggest point. It's just not letting the Celtics get extra shots.
Yeah. And one more point about the game last night is I think a role player that's really getting undermined right now is Tobias Harris. Tobias Harris had 11 rebounds for us last night, which is huge. He might not produce points-wise, but he can come up with big on the defensive end, getting those rebounds.
Yeah, and he had a number of good possessions as Tatum's primary defender, which I feel like is going like underrated, under the radar.
Yeah, I mean Tatum has been just cold, especially in the first quarter. I mean, these past 2 games, he hasn't hit anything in the first quarter.
Yeah,
he only
he's
seems
had it rough.
He's
with
had it
PJ
really
Tucker
rough.
and Tobias guarding him as a tough combo of players to have guarding you.
Exactly, and I'm looking at Tobias Harris. I mean, I'll look at him as like he's okay. I mean, I'm really pleased from what I'm seeing from all the Sixers. So, I mean, going into Game 6, what are your keys to winning this game?
I would say just continue to play hard defense on Tatum and Brown. And like they're not going to have the shooting night that they've had the past 2 games. They're too good to have 3 games in a row like that, especially in a do or die game like Game 6. So I mean, Tatum's going to be hot at some points. Brown's going to be hot at some points. Horford's not going to go 0 for 7. You can't let that kind of bring you down. You can't just throw in the towel, let the energy go down. Like I mean, like we said before, there's points. I think we said that in the last pod we did, but there's going to be points where the Celtics go up 10 points, 12 points, and you can't get discouraged. You have to let guys like Harden and Embiid do their thing. Just trust them. Can't turn the ball over. Just do what the Sixers do. This is a good basketball team.
Yeah. And another thing to note is about the Celtics. Last year, they found themselves in the exact same position they are now. The only difference is the coaching. How much a difference the coaching is going to make, who knows? Last year, they found themselves down 3-2. They lost a pivotal Game 5 to the Bucks at home, and they had to go on the road to Milwaukee and win. Sure enough, last year, obviously, they made it to the finals. So they went to Milwaukee, they won, and they brought it back home, and they won Game 7 at home. So Celtics team, I mean, the entire team is basically the same outside of the coach, the majority of it, at least. So this Celtics team, they seem to play their best when their backs are to the wall. I mean, we saw that in the Hawks series. I mean, the Hawks didn't get this, but like, I think they pushed the Celtics to the brink. They've pushed them to a breaking point because it was like, this is the Hawks here. Like, we shouldn't lose to them. There's no reason why we should lose. So I think that the Celtics really came back. And that's something that I'm kind of looking out for. I'm a little scared of Jason Tatum breaking out for 40 points or Jaylen Brown going off for like 30. Brown and Tatum combining for like 70. So again, like you said, lock down Jason Tatum, lock down Jaylen Brown. Al Horford manage if you, like, just beat him on defense. That's really where he contributes. So yeah, I mean, are there any other keys you want to touch on?
Just that every game the Sixers have won, they've had at least 2 players score 25 points. And every game the Sixers have lost, that has not happened. They've had 0 or just 1 player score 25. Game 1, it was Harden and Maxey. Game 4, it was Embiid and Harden. And last game, it was Maxey and Embiid. So, I mean, the fact that it was different combinations of guys each time, I feel like is really encouraging. Because, I mean, we know we have at least 3 guys that could step up. I think Tobias could score 25 points at some point. Last game, he scored 16. Harden scored 17. Embiid and Maxey both went for 30 plus. So the Sixers, those 4 guys all averaged 24 points across the 4 of them, which is just, I mean, crazy. That's one of the biggest reasons why they won, was a couple guys step up and then everyone else just does the job that they have to.
Right.
So, let Embiid cook. Whoever's cooking that night, let him cook. And, everybody else just play good defense, rebound, just let them do their thing. That's kind of how the Sixers are built. I mean, Harden can step up, be hitting step back threes, or you just feed the ball into Embiid. There's
Mhm.
lots of ways that we could kill you. So just gotta
Yeah,
figure out what it is that night.
or you can let Tyrese kill you with his finishing. I mean, he's been
Yeah.
he's really I think he's proven himself as an elite finisher in this league.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, this year he found himself in some circumstances where he wasn't starting, but I mean, this is his time to shine.
Yeah.
So I mean, looking forward, I mean, we talked about conference finals, possibility of that. Is the NBA Finals a feasible thing? I mean, I feel kind of bad talking about it because it's not the series isn't over. It's far from over. We still have 2 potential games to play. We still have to close out the series at home tomorrow night. But looking at the NBA Finals and the possibility of winning it all, I mean, is that a real possibility? Like, do you feel confident in the Sixers being able to make a serious finals run right now?
Yeah. And I mean, it's crazy to think how much more confident I am than I was just 2 games ago after game 3.
Hmm.
Everything seemed hopeless, but now, I mean, the Sixers are really proving that they can perform in the playoffs this year. This is a different Sixers team than we've seen.
Hmm.
And I mean, the Celtics, I think, are the biggest challenge left in the playoffs. If we can, you know, throw this team aside, I don't want to discount Miami. I don't want to discount any of those teams in the West. They're all good teams. That's why they're still alive in the playoffs.
Hmm.
But I mean, Boston is really the toughest team that I think the Sixers could possibly face.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, and we talked about that. I mean, looking at the league right now, I think just from a statistical standpoint as well as just watching them all year, the Celtics are the best team in the playoffs. You
yeah,
can make a possible argument with the Nuggets right now, but I mean, the East is just it was so much tougher in the East this year. I think just based on strength of schedule and who the teams the Celtics have beaten. I mean, the Celtics is definitely the best team in the league. So um, I agree with you there. The only team I really fear is the Suns, but the Suns are on a brink of elimination right now. Possibly the Lakers. I would not like to see LeBron in the
mhm.
final because, I mean, LeBron has lost more than he has won in the finals, but he's still LeBron.
Yeah.
So,
He
and he's
takes it
looking
up another
for that fifth
notch.
ring. Yeah, and LeBron is hungry. He is
Mhm.
hungry for that ring. So, looking at all that, and before we go, and looking at all that, I think it's very feasible. But for me, I don't want to bamboozle myself. I'm not trying to be like heartbroken if the Sixers lose these next 2 games and lose the series. So, I
Yeah.
mean, I'm not gonna I don't wanna make any takes about the NBA finals, like real takes until we actually make it to the Eastern Conference Finals. Look at that series against probably the Heat and see what we're looking at in the finals. But before we go, I just want to talk one moment at um the future of this franchise. If they can move on to the Eastern Conference Finals, and we talked about how if we lost this series, it probably would be a clean slate for next year. Harden leaving, Doc getting fired, possibly an Embiid trade of some sort. So when you're looking at this team now and the potential they have, and looking at, I mean, they're 1 win away from the Eastern Conference Finals. If they just make it to the Eastern Conference Finals, what do you think of the future of this team?
Yeah, I mean, the difference in teams that, like, the Sixers would bring back next year if they just lose these next 2 games versus if they can win one of them is huge. I mean, we talked about it a little already off camera, but, I mean, it's not an exaggeration to say that this is the most important 2 games or possibly 1 game in Sixers franchise history in the last 20 plus years, probably since the 2001 finals, just
Mhm.
because not only because it moves us on into playoffs into to face, easier opponents, somewhat easier opponents than the Celtics, but also because if we lose this series in the fashion of going up 3-2 and then blowing the next 2 games, Doc gets fired, Harden leaves because he's a restricted free agent next year, and he's already talked about possibly going back to Houston. Embiid probably gets disgruntled, request a trade. I mean, he's 29, going on 30. He's had his injury concerns. He's hungry for a ring. He wants to win now. If the Sixers keep losing in the second round, at some point he's going to want out. And the team's probably going to build around Maxi and, not be the contender that we've known them to be in the last 5 years and
Mhm.
start rebuilding again. So, I
Right.
mean, huge implications in these next 2 games.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, who it's scary because I mean, I just know like I'm not gonna be able to sleep tonight. I know I'm not going to be able to sleep tonight. Tomorrow I'm going to be on edge all day. And the worst part is I work tomorrow night. So I'm going to have to like some finesse a way to stream the game while I'm working, like cooking up some chicken for Chick-fil-A. So
Good luck with that.
What?
I said good luck with that.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I'm in the kitchen. We're allowed to listen to music, so I'll probably just listen to the radio.
Okay.
See if I can get the radio stream or something like that. So we'll see. But that should about do it with us here at 2 and 5 Scoop. Sixers with a massive Game 5 win. Super pumped about it. Got to close it out tomorrow night at the Wells Fargo Center against the Celtics to move on to the Eastern Conference Finals for the first time since 2001. So thank you all for tuning in. Subscribe to the channel, Pixelwap Media. Make sure to give us a follow on all social media on Instagram at 215 Scoop PSM, Twitter at 215 Scoop PSM, and on TikTok at 215 Scoop. Thank you guys again for listening. Thank you for tuning in. It's me and Asher tuning out. Go Sixers.
Go Sixers. See you guys.